All right. In here. Can I sit down over there?
Chair.
Yes. Yep. Chair over that way. Good. Oh, why'd I have Gerald on this? I have him on the, hold on. I have to have them see you, so. Okay. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna put you guys on mute. Gerald apparently forgot how to do that. Yeah.
If they have a question, can they put it into a chat or how do I do that?
Yep.
I just
They have a question. Yep. Put it in the chat right here.
All right.
Yep.
All right.
All right, guys. We'll get started. It's not quite 6:15, but we'll get started. We're super excited to have Steve Maxwell here today. Steve Maxwell's dad, father of Brynna Maxwell, who was with Magic from 4th grade through high school. So he's been through everything that everyone's been through as far as 4th grade, through high school. So I thought it would be a great opportunity. He's done this before, but a great opportunity to kind of offer some perspective, both as a parent and, a parent of a player that's been through the program and just been through the recruiting process, et cetera. So just a lot of knowledge. And I'll let him talk to you about that. So
Well, good.
thank you for coming.
You bet. You bet. Thanks, Vanessa. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. Couple folks are joining us. You guys can hear me out there on the Zoom call? We're good? Okay. So Vanessa asked me to come talk about recruiting, and I could do that. And I look forward to the chance to share what I know, what I've experienced, but that's all I can really share is what I've experienced through my daughter. Everyone's journey is different. Everybody's personality is different. Their opportunities are different. What their goals are different. So, Brynna's story won't be your story. You'll have your own recruiting journey. But I know that in working and watching Brynna go through her recruiting process, there are some things that hopefully I can share that translate to what you guys might be going through now or might be going through in the future. So what I'm going to tell you is largely it's only from my own personal experience through my daughter. And that's all it is. But again, there's some things that I think translate and are common across level, across kids, whether it be boys, girls. There's just some truths out there. So looking forward to that. I can talk and talk and talk, but I want to make sure that I'm talking about things that matter to you guys and on the phone, on the Zoom call as well. So, before I just launch in, what's on your mind? What would you like to hear me talk about as it relates to recruiting? You guys want to hear about what it's like when a coach reaches out, what visits are like, what you have to do to get noticed? What kind of things are important to hear? And if you're on the Zoom call, send a chat. Yes. Okay, visiting colleges, we'll talk about that. If I forget that, make sure I do, because I can tell you about that. What else? What are you curious about? Okay.
Everything, right?
Everything. Okay. And out there, if you have something on the Zoom, just send me a chat. We'll definitely talk about visits. I think what I'll do is I'll kind of start with Brynna, my daughter, her story through the Magic and kind of how she developed as a player and how her recruitment, what happened over time in her recruitment. So she joined the Magic in 4th grade. Prior to fourth grade, she had played, Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, rec type of basketball. And she showed up in fourth grade. She had no expectations, nor did I. We had never done AAU or club basketball before. I had played competitive basketball, 100 years ago. I had no idea what it was like, at the time. So that's when we met Vanessa. And Brynna had an amazing experience with the Magic. And in her time with the Magic, she met and made lifelong friends. And she really cultivated a love for the game. And that's the first thing I would tell you. If you want to play in college, and let me ask this room, looks like most of you are high school, is that right? Who wants to play in college? Okay. Well, I'll tell you, that was Brynna's dream from the time she was little, was to play in college. And I played small college, Division III level, but I didn't, she had big dreams. And I'll tell you, if you have big dreams to play in college, the thing that non-negotiable, no matter what level, is you got to love the game. You got to love it, because it's hard. I mean, you think it's hard now. When you get to college, it's hard. It's every day. It's competition. It's a grind. But if you love it, you'll love the grind. And you guys know what I'm talking about. But that's when Brynna joined the Magic. It put fuel on her love for the game, because she loved the seriousness of playing AAU and club basketball. She loved that wins mattered and losses hurt. And I would tell you, that's something as you think about yourself, as you progress forward, how much do you love the game? And not everybody does, and that's okay. But if you can hang on to that love for the game and grow it, that's going to help you be ready for college. So Brynna joined in fourth grade, and, was okay. And, had a great interest in the game and some skills. Pretty average athletically, I'd say, through elementary school. She sure wasn't the fastest. She had some pretty good skills as far as shooting and whatnot. But you couldn't look at her and just say automatically she was going to play, high-level college basketball. But that didn't matter at the time. When you're in young age, and you guys are past this point, but when you're young, it's about developing your love for the game, building relationships, learning fundamentals. You're not playing for a scholarship when you're in fourth grade or sixth grade or seventh grade, but you're playing to build a foundation. And that foundation is building your skill set, your mindset, learning how to compete. It's building the foundation that's going to allow you to play at a higher level if you develop your skills and your body to do that. I've seen a lot of players who are very skilled, very athletic, that never developed the mind to compete, the passion to play, and they didn't make it. So it starts with a love for the game. And so into middle school, Brynna started developing more. She worked so hard. I mean, I had to hold her back. Gerald and Vanessa can tell you that. I mean, she loved the game, and she put her heart into it, and she kept getting better. That's what happens, right? You get in what you get in, you get out of it what you put into it. She also developed physically and became more athletic. And by the time she was in eighth grade, she was playing in the viewing tournaments that you guys are playing in. You guys traveling and playing in viewing tournaments. She was doing that, getting experience of what it's like to play against, different competition from around the country, play in front of a few coaches. And at the end of her eighth grade summer, she was starting to get some mail, some questionnaires, some camp invites from colleges. Nothing serious, but it was affirmation to her that she was on the right track. Not a lot. I mean, just a couple pieces of mail would trickle in. But she kept working and kept grinding, went into high school, played at Gig Harbor High School as a freshman. She didn't start as a freshman in high school. That was kind of the coach's philosophy, but she didn't start. But she just kept working. and had really good experience at viewing tournaments. Trusted the process, trusted Vanessa, and Gerald, and her other coaches. And, these coaches, they pay attention. And now, not every coach recruits the same way. Some coaches will watch the younger kids more than others. Some really focus on, the potential of where that player's going. Some schools will wait until later and kind of figure out who's already there. But Brynna was fortunate to play in front of some coaches that were able to look forward and project players as to who they thought they could become. So a couple schools got more interested after her 9th grade year, 100% from the viewing tournament. College coaches, that they care about high school, but they really care about the club basketball scene. The circuit is where the coaches focus. She got invited to a few prospect camps. I'll talk about those. And, I'll talk about those in a moment, but, she went to one of them at University of Utah and did really well, competed against players from all over the country that they had invited. And, they offered her a scholarship. So she had received full ride basketball scholarship offer after her freshman year. And yes, she hadn't started one high school game. So I tell you that you can't define yourself by one experience. If you just looked at high school, there's a lot of girls that started and played more than her. But that didn't dissuade her from trying to be as good as she could be, in the time and the opportunities she had to play. And she was fortunate to have that opportunity. So she went back her sophomore year and had a really good high school season and started to get more local notoriety, had a very good summer after her sophomore year on the viewing circuit, and played Chicago and Vegas and LA, all the places you guys are probably playing. And, so that's her summer going into her junior year. And she did great and started to get a lot of mail, a lot of interest. It was, at that age, the coaches can't call you, but you can call them. They encouraged her to call them. She was having, weekly phone calls with coaches, getting mail, starting to get offers. Kept working. Her junior year, she had a good high school team. They won the state championship. She was, state player of the year for the state for 3A. And then started getting big offers. She got scholarship offers from 8 of the 12 Pac-12 teams. And then it became decision time. So she made a decision to attend University of Utah in June between her junior and senior year. So she went into her senior year with that all figured out and behind her. And she was very blessed. So that's kind of Brynna's story in a nutshell. But through that, a lot of things I learned. And I'll share some of those. But again, I'd offer if you want me to talk about something, raise your hand and tell me. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep going. So who here knows about different levels of college basketball? Okay, got a few hands up. So when I say levels, I'm talking about, Division I, Division II, Division III, NAIA, junior college, community college. And one thing I learned is that all those levels, I played Division III, I told you that. My daughter's playing Division I. I've got friends who played with Brynna that are amazing basketball players that are playing Division II, and they love it. And they're getting their college paid for. You don't have to go to UW, to UCLA, to Utah, to USC to get your college paid for. There is opportunities out there at all levels. And the important thing isn't the level you play at. The important thing is that you're playing at a level that aligns with your goals, academically or basketball wise. You're playing at a level where you can compete, where you can get on the court. And you're playing at a level for a team where you're a priority, where the coach wants you. because they recruit a lot of players, and there's players on the team that are on scholarship that aren't a priority. I've seen that in watching Brynna. They don't get off the bench, even though they're very good. And as you go through the recruiting process, you'll be able to figure out what kind of priority you are to them. And there's ways you can ask questions that help you understand, are you a nice to have recruit or a have to have type recruit? And it's all about the fit, not the name, not the level, it's the fit. And that fit, again, from my perspective, is what's the alignment with your goals, with where you can play, and where the coach really wants you. If you can find an intersection of those three things, you found a pretty good place. And my daughter's blessed to have that. Somebody said something on the chat. Yeah, so here's a great question that I'll talk about, is what I did as a parent to help my daughter through the process. So I would tell you, probably the biggest thing I did was I put her in a place where I let her pursue what she loved, and I didn't push her. Rather, I let her pull me. So while I encouraged her to do all she could, I never dragged her to the court. I never made her play. More often than not, I had to slow her down and tell her to rest. But I always there to support her. I never made it about a scholarship. I always made it about getting better. I did my best to give her opportunities to play where she could play. And one thing as a parent that's hard maybe for a player to see in the moment is that some of the things that make you successful as an 8th grader or a 9th grader against your friends, those aren't going to work in college, right? So, if you might be the high scorer on your team, but not all scoring is going to translate to the next level. So as a parent, one thing I tried to do was, try to be a mirror for Brynna to help her see things she couldn't see herself. So if she was successful doing something, that's fine. But if that wasn't going to work at the next level, let's work on something that will translate. So I always helped her think about what's going to translate to the next level. Okay. So she had some skills that I was able to help her identify, of shooting and footwork, passing, things that are going to matter at the next level. As a parent, I tried to help her see that and develop the right things. For example, if you're in high school and you're 5'10" and you're the best rebounder on your team, that's awesome. You should keep rebounding, but you're not going to be a great rebounder in college if you're 5'10". So what can you work on that will translate? Okay, your ball handling, your passing, shooting, things like that. So I think a parent can play a role in helping your child understand what the next level looks like and not get caught up in, this is working today, so that's what I'm going to keep doing. Okay, does that make sense? So we talked about levels. So, Division I is like, University of Washington, Washington State, et cetera. The players that play Division I, whether it be boys or girls, you guys know this. You're in the top 1%, either athletically or skill-wise. That's a given. And I imagine some of you in this room are in that realm. But with that, and I've watched Brynna and I've watched her teammates and I've watched lots of players that go on to Division I and seeing who's successful and who's not. It's a given that you are athletically gifted or your skills are among the best. But you also have this huge passion to play. You're an incredible competitor. You have to have enormous confidence, and you got to love to compete. It's competition every day. Every year, the coach is bringing in the very best players they can find. No one's spot is secured. Everything is earned, and it's about competition every day. So if you love to compete, there's a home for you there. and you're competing against the best. Division II is similar. I mean, Division II players, you could be all state and you could play Division II. Usually you're not playing Division I, maybe because of, foot speed or height. But Division II is high level basketball, high level, and you get your college paid for. That's like Seattle Pacific, Central Washington, Western Washington. Those are great places to play, and they're all around. When I think about the players, and there's a fine line sometimes between what Division I and Division II looks like to a coach, and it usually comes down to your size for your position and your athleticism. Okay, so for instance, if you're on the girls' side, if you're a 6-foot player and you're a post player at 6 foot, it's probably hard to find a spot in Division I. Okay, but Division II, you can play at 6 foot. Your skill set could be exactly the same as someone who's playing Division I, but they're probably 6'2", 6'3". Hey, Marcus.
Coach Diego needs a mom and he needs a coach. Okay.
So the difference between Division I, Division II is usually size for your position. So what I would say is you get into high school, it's time to, and a parent can help here too, it's time to start assessing yourself honestly as to what level feels right. Am I, when I go look at the rosters of the teams that I want to go play for, and if I'm a guard or if I'm a center, how big are the guards and centers on that team, on that roster? And if, again, I speak from the girls' side, if the centers are 6'5", and I'm a center in high school and I'm 6'1", it might be hard to find a fit on that roster, right? So a coach is going to first look at your size for your position. That's what really is probably the first filter among divisions. Is that making sense? So as you guys are doing these viewing tournaments, anybody doing camps also? Hand over here. So there's camps, and I know in Zoom and COVID, it's different. So I'm going to talk just from a normal environment. But what Brynna found valuable is not just the viewing tournaments. Those are important. Those are really important. It's a chance for the coaches to see you compete against the best players. If they're able to be there in person, they can see things they just can't see any other way than to see that in person. But camps are a great opportunity to be recruited. And again, I know it's hard when there's COVID and there's camps don't exist, but they will exist again. That those days are coming. So most, if not all, colleges will do what they call prospect camps or elite camps. Okay, they have the general camp that's like anybody who signs up goes. They have team camps where high school teams come, but these prospect elite camps, you guys heard of those? Okay, those are chances to go play right in front of the coaches. And the trick there is if you're going to play at a Division II level, you should, or Division I level or Division III, you should go to the camp that's the level that you're being recruited. If you're going to play Division III, that's great, but going to the University of Washington Husky Prospect Camp isn't going to help you get recruited. Okay, so you've got to figure that out. So as you get into high school, I don't know what grades you are in high school, but the sooner you can sort of zero in on here's where I think the right level is for me, then you can target and say, you know what, I'm going to go to the Central Washington Prospect Camp or the Seattle Pacific or the Seattle U or the University of Washington. Because then you're playing in front of the coaches that are going to view you as a recruitable player. Okay, so we talked about how do you know what level, right? Your size for the position, your skill set. Is it obvious that you're Is it obvious you're Division I? Is it obvious you're Division II? You got to look in the mirror and Vanessa can help you figure that out if you don't know. But those camps are great because you get to compete on the coach's home floor, doing the coach's drills. When Brynna went, she was able to compete against the current players on the roster at some of these schools. Oftentimes you're invited to come to these prospect camps. That's a good sign. I would tell you that if you just get a flyer in the mail about a camp, that's a good thing. But a better thing is to take that flyer, call the coach. You can all call these coaches, pick up the phone, and introduce yourself and say, I'm thinking about coming to your camp, and get on their radar screen. So when you walk into that gym, they know who you are, that you're not just another face, but you're a person who they've already sort of marked as someone to watch. Because they can't watch everybody. I mean, that's the reality. These prospect camps are usually fairly small. And if they're not small, they'll make them small. So for instance, when Brynna went to the Utah's prospect camp, there was maybe 80 girls that showed up. When she got there, immediately they took 20 and put them into one gym, and 60 and put them into the other. And the 20 were the recruiting targets. And that's where the head coach spent all their time. So if you're not on their radar screen and you just show up at these recruiting camps, you may end up in that gym with 60 kids with no coaches. It's not going to help you get recruited. So sometimes you've got to take steps to get on the radar screen yourself if you're not already. I mean, Brynna did that. She would call up a coach and say, hey, I've got some video. Here's a game. I want to come to your camp. I look forward to it. And they are able to know who she was. It's a step you got to take. There's a chat here. So the question here is, did Brynna miss some events, like some school events, because she wanted to play at a higher level? How did that affect her with friends in school and friends on the Magic team? So, anything in life, you make sacrifices for what you care about. You guys do that every day. You make choices every day about what matters to you. And yeah, Brynna missed things because she wanted to do this. This was her priority. This was her dream. So she was willing to make whatever sacrifice that would be. Now she surrounded herself with friends that had some common goals. So I don't think she missed anything with her friends. Her friends were the Magic. That was her. Those were her sisters. But it's to be great at anything is about sacrifice. It's about choices. So just like you guys have had to do, you've had to balance schoolwork with travel and basketball, and Brynna sure did that. But yeah, it's not easy, but it's worth it if you care about it and you love it. So as you get older, let me ask the high school, what grades are we in here in high school? Junior? Sophomore? Sophomores and juniors? So, Brynna never had to live through COVID as a recruit. She's on college campus now with COVID, but she didn't get recruited during COVID. So I can't really speak to exactly how to manage that. But I know there was a question about visits. So again, I'm going to speak in a non-COVID way, in a normal world sort of way, because that's all that Brynna ever got recruited in. There's two types of visits. There's unofficial and official. Do you guys know the difference between those two? All right. So unofficial visits means that you pay. Okay, you pay the cost to go, and any food you eat on campus, you pay for. The school is not allowed to pay for any of your expenses for that visit. Okay. Official visits are when the school pays for it all. They'll fly you to their campus, they'll put you up in a hotel, and they'll buy you dinner, and it's a lot of fun. But those are infrequent, right? And not everybody gets a chance to do that. But everybody can do an unofficial, and they aren't all expensive. I mean, if you want to play Division I basketball, you can drive from here to Seattle U, to University of Washington. You can, what Brynna would do sometimes on viewing tournaments. We played a viewing tournament down in the Bay Area in San Francisco. So we're already down there. And we would intentionally fly out a day late sometimes if I was with her. And we would take that extra day and go visit a college nearby since we were already down there. So it wasn't like extra expensive. But you can do unofficial visits anytime you want, as long as it's allowed health-wise. And it's a lot like an official visit, except, it's on you have to pay for the cost, whether those be a small expense or a larger expense. But it's a great chance to meet the coaches, meet the team. Brynna will sometimes get a chance to play open gym with the players during the unofficial visits. She'd, it's nothing like being up close and personal with these colleges. It really helps the choice. Those are unlimited, okay? So usually when you're being recruited, a coach will ask you if you'll take an unofficial visit. It's very common. I would say, again, I understand COVID is a limiter, but do as many of those as you can. And now with COVID, obviously you're doing it with Zoom. So that's easier in some respects. Official visits. So when Brynna was coming through, she graduated in 2019. So 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. When you were a senior, you were allowed 5 official visits. So she only took 3 of them. They're hard. I mean, they're a lot of fun, but they're hard because you can only pick one school. So I would say if you're not serious about a school, even though it might be fun to go on a trip to Los Angeles just for fun, you got to say no. Eventually, you can only pick one school. So the more schools you invite into your final choice, the more hard conversations explaining to that head coach why you're choosing somebody else you have to have. So Brynna took 3 of her 5 official visits. She turned down a lot of great options that wanted her to come visit. And she made her official visits to University of Utah, University of Washington, and Gonzaga. And those are fun. At that point on an official visit, they're really recruiting you hard. Right now, as you guys are in kind of the younger side of high school, it probably feels like you're recruiting these colleges as much as they're recruiting you. And that's part of the process is, you're performing and auditioning for them, trying to get on their radar screen, trying to get onto their contact list, and then their recruiting list and their pursue list. Vanessa talked to you about that. You want to move up that ladder. The contact list is you're getting mail. There might be, I don't know what number, 200 kids getting mail. They're not watching everyone on that 200, but you're on a list, which is good. That's awesome. You got to move from that list of being one of 200 to one of 30, let's just say, that they're actually watching, that they're traveling to watch, that they're tuning in to watch on Baller TV or whatever medium, that they're asking for game film. That's when you get on the recruiting list, and they're evaluating you. And then when they really decide that they want you, they pursue you. That's the pursue list. And that's when it flips, where it moves from you recruiting to them really coming after you. But I know it's hard. In these early high school years to manage that. But keep doing what you're doing around, trusting the process every day. Question: when she picked her college, she wanted to go. Did she tell the other coaches of her decision so they wouldn't be waiting for an answer? So that's a good question. So, these coaches offer you a scholarship. the ball's in your court in some respects, because you got to do a couple things. You got to perform, because they can take that offer away, and then you've got to make a choice. So as Brynna went through her process, she had probably had maybe 30 offers at one point, and it was kind of overwhelming. So she started saying no, and winnowing it way down, because eventually it becomes a lot. So you say no, and these coaches would rather hear you say no than have you drag them along and avoid it or delay that hard conversation. So if you're being recruited by a school and there's no way I'm going to go to school there, just be honest with them and tell them up front. They hear no way more than they hear yes. It's not going to offend them. In fact, frankly, they'll be glad you did, because they can move on and focus on someone where it does make sense. So once you're able to figure out what's not a fit, then tell the coach, because then they can, not travel to see you and not spend their time and money where they could be spending it somewhere else. But you will also find schools that feel like a great fit, and those are the ones that you end up perhaps taking a visit to. And you got to say no, because you only can pick one, right? So the way it worked for Brynna, her final three were, UW, Gonzaga, and Utah. And Utah was her obvious choice. She called Utah first. I can remember her doing it. I didn't hear the conversation, but I know she did it one morning. She called Utah first, told them the good news, and then immediately called, University of Washington and Gonzaga and told them the bad news. And one of the coaches, they were disappointed, but they weren't the easiest conversations. So she was glad she cut it to 3 and didn't have 10 of those hard conversations to make. But you got it, out of respect for these coaches, when it's not the right fit, you give them a quick answer. And I would tell you this, I talked about being a priority earlier on, where you're looking for that intersection of your goals in a college, where you can play, and where you're a priority. And I would tell you, when you start getting recruited, you got to do all you can to figure out, am I a priority? And here's some ways to know, okay? Are you talking to the head coach or the assistant coach? Okay, the head coach doesn't talk to every recruit. A lot of times, it always starts off with an assistant coach. But if you're a priority, pretty soon that head coach is spending time with you. Brynna had colleges that offered her a scholarship that the head coach never talked to her. Okay, they would have taken her on the team, but she wasn't a priority. I can guarantee you the head coach was talking to other players that they wanted more. So is the head coach involved? That's super important. Super important. It's so competitive that the first player off the starter and the 8th man are very similar. It's who does the coach want to play? Who does the coach trust? So your relationship with the head coach is important. It helps you understand if you're a priority. What else? What other topics? What am I missing? Vanessa, anything you want me to talk on that I haven't?
Maybe we can talk about this. Speaking for Brynna, but just everyone's recruiting process is different. So Brynna was obviously one of our high profile players on a team of there were some others and there weren't.
Yeah.
How do you as a parent, still connecting with other parents, and then how did Brynna handle that?
That's a good question. And honestly, I think the recruiting process was harder on me than on Brynna. I mean, Brynna was always focused on basketball. It's all recruiting was secondary to her. She just wanted to play. I was kind of focused on recruiting. So I sort of, I got pretty emotionally involved, as parents do sometimes. And as a parent, I would tell, this is Gerald asked about advice to parents. I would say stay out of the comparison game. You know, your kid's journey is their own, and to compare your child against how someone else is being recruited isn't going to solve anything. So everyone has their own path and their own journey. And I would say if you're being recruited, take it humbly and gratefully. And if you're not being recruited at the level you want to be, you know, don't let envy and jealousy and comparison sneak in, because it's a hard process, but everyone has their own path. And, you know, there's a saying that says comparison is the thief of joy. And when you're young and when you're in high school, this should be about joy as a player and as a parent. As soon as you start comparing, you know, and it's hard not to when your player's doing this better than this player and this other player's getting recruited differently or maybe higher, or you know, you get into rankings and it's all kinds of comparison and all that stuff. Ultimately, it doesn't do anything but steal your joy. These coaches are going to find you. You've heard that. If you can play, they're going to find you, and you're going to find the right level. At the end of the day, as I look back, you know, I can only speak on the girls' side. It's all I've ever watched or been through. There are more roster opportunities in college than I would say there are serious basketball players pursuing them. I mean, there's a big filtering process. And if you stick with it and keep working on your game and focus on the right level, you're going to find a home. It just happens. There's too many roster spots available. It's true.
Appreciate you reinforce a lot of the stuff that we talk about. It's just nice for perspective. So parents, do you have any questions? Any more questions? Anybody on Zoom?
I've taken all those questions.
All those
Yeah.
questions? Okay. Well, we really
All
appreciate
right.
to see
You bet. Yeah. Go Magic. I wore the Magic shoes today. New shoes.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Vanessa. You bet. Anytime.
All right.
Good luck to you guys.
All right. I'm gonna log off now. This is recorded, hopefully. I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's recorded. So I'll share it with the parents so you guys can review it, and of course the parents that didn't see it. All right. Thanks for jumping on, guys. Take care.